So you go from losing 2 games you were expected to lose. You play very well against a team you should really were not expected to be competitive with last week. This week, you're expected to play well and get a victory against a team that hasn't won a road game in 2 years. Oh, by the way, that last road game they had won was against you 2 years ago. And this game looked so similar to the game that was held here 2 years ago. Because once again, the Bears blow it to the Detroit Lions. They lose in this one 31-30, and I cannot believe it. I cannot actually believe what I just witnessed. And while yes, we're now sitting at 3-7, and it looks like we're going to get a really good draft pick. The tank's on. Tank is on. Again, who expected this team to compete for a playoff spot or even compete at all? Not me. So seeing them having 3 wins right now is fine. But this is the game they should have won. They should have won this game. They went into the fourth quarter with a double-digit lead. And while it's still a 2-possession game, and those games do get kind of blown, you see that more often. I find the 3-possession games that you blow much more egregious. This was just equally as bad because Detroit's just not a team that does this. The first time they've accomplished coming back from 14-plus points in the fourth quarter since 1993. It's been 30 years. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. If they can't win this game, what tells me they're going to beat Atlanta? What tells me that Aaron Rodgers isn't just going to completely pull his usual BS and beat the Bears again, despite them looking just as bad as Chicago? If not even worse. They looked worse against Detroit. Chicago looked just fine, at least offensively. I'm going to get to it in a minute, but I'm just so tired of this. I'm so tired of this. And you know what the biggest problem is? This type of stuff could totally be avoided if we did not trade Roquan Smith or Robert Quinn. Because the second Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn were gone, the defense has looked horrendous, letting up 49, 35, and 31 in 3 straight weeks. You can't do that. It's looking very much like the Detroit Lions defense through the first couple weeks of the year, where Detroit was able to score a lot. They were able to score 30 points a game, pretty much. But their defense was absolutely awful and was just letting up points left and right. So even if they scored 35 points, they're still losing. And the problem is, it wasn't Justin Fields' fault. A lot of people will blame him that it's his fault just because the quarterback does take a lot of the blame. And while, yes, he had that awful throw that ended up being a pick six, overall, Fields was not the problem. And I say this because when you look at the rest of the offense, what does he have to work with? Oh, right, nothing. He has no receivers. Now look, Mooney and Claypool are at least decent receivers. Mooney is an above-average receiver, in my opinion. But the rest of the receivers are just nothing. Cole Kmet has actually come into his own. He's got 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. 2 in each. 5 in the last 3 weeks. Cole Kmet is finally starting to live up to his potential as a tight end. I'm not concerned about those 3 receivers and those 3 players. It's the rest of them that really grinds my gears. Because if you have a really well-schemed defense, you can shut down Mooney, and Claypool hasn't had enough time to really get into this offense that he's pretty easy to shut down. So if you can shut down Mooney, you've shut down this entire passing offense. You've shut down this entire passing offense from this receiving core because they can't catch and they can't get open. So it forces Fields to run around the pocket like Lord knows how long. And then he finally ends up running or something. He can't pass the ball because he has no receivers to throw to. They can't get open. And when they do, they will drop the ball sometimes. So it's like, if he gets better receivers, I think that he can get some better throws in there. If he has a better O-line that can protect him for more than 2 seconds before he starts scrambling around and around. Better it looks. Now, I know that Fields is ranked around in the top 10 in terms of QBs that have had the most time in the pocket. And that's because the pocket moves. It's not just, the pocket isn't necessarily from the time that the ball is snapped to the point that he starts scrambling. That's just the time he's in the pocket. Doesn't matter, and it's just frustrating because if Fields has more than 3 seconds to throw, I sure hope he's usually able to put something in. He has struggled as a passer, and that's not nothing I can sugarcoat it. But when you throw only 20 times a game, you shouldn't expect for Fields to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's not going to happen. When you run for over 250 yards, and again, by the way, the second straight game they've done that, over 225 yards for, I think this is like 5 straight games. You don't need to pass the ball 30 times. And the frustrating part is they have the best rushing offense. They have the best rushing offense. It's not even a question. They're averaging over 225 yards a game right now. They've had 225 plus for the last 5 games. They're running the ball extremely efficiently. The problem is they're dead last in passing. Dead last. It looks exactly like what we had in 2017. We had no receivers. Our top receiver in 2017 was Kendall Wright. And he was a slot receiver. So we couldn't air the ball downfield. It was basically a running team. We couldn't do anything. And Trubisky was given the shaft in his first year. This year, the quarterback is running fantastic, but he can't throw right now. And, and it's not like he can't throw, period. He had a great throw to Kmet that went all the way for 50 yards. 50-yard passing touchdown for Justin Fields. The problem is they can't consistently pass the ball. And Fields is looking inconsistent as a passer. He's starting to become more and more consistent as a runner. And is getting a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. Well, then again, he's getting used to a crumbling pocket, so he's able to scramble out of every scenario you can potentially think of. That's not what he did in college, because in college, he's at Ohio State. You're going to have top-tier recruits. You're going to have a great offensive line. You're going to have a great team regardless. So he had a lot more time to pass and a lot more time to just be calm, not worry about the rush getting to him. Now the rush is basically getting to him on almost every single play if he's not getting the ball out in like 2 seconds. So he's gotten better as a runner. He's becoming incredibly agile. I mean, on the last play of the game, Justin Fields dodged, I believe, 3 potential sacks and then held onto the ball again, because I'm assuming he held onto the ball because no receiver was open and was finally sacked to end the game. And I just am so frustrated because all that's going to be taken away in this game is that the fact that the Bears lost and that Justin Fields gets another L despite another fantastic rushing performance. He threw for almost 50 yards more than last week. 2 touchdowns, did throw a pick. First time in 3 weeks that it's a pick that he's thrown that has actually counted against his record. But still, I mean, as far as I can remember, Justin Fields has at least one really bad picked pass in the last 5 weeks. Yes, the picks against Dallas and Miami were taken back, but still, he needs to clean up his passing game. And I don't know if that'll even happen this season because the receiving room is absolutely terrible. But you know what? This is still the best the offense has looked in the past month. 30-plus points in the last 4 games. Yes, they scored 29 against Dallas, but they're averaging 30 points a game. That doesn't happen with Bears offenses. The Bears offense is actually looking competent somewhat. They're scoring 30 points a game. That should win you a lot of football games in this league. 30 points a game is really good. Problem is, 49, 35, and 31 are the numbers of the points they've let up in the last 3 games. You can't win if you let up 30 points. So it's like they're in these shootouts, and it's like they can't. I don't understand it. 31 points against in this game. Defense looked bad again, and penalties were a major issue in this game, and it's a massive reason why they lost. Yeah, they had 9 penalties for 86 yards in this game. Absolutely terrible. The Lions were only penalized twice It seemed like every time there was a good run, there was a holding call. But, oh my goodness. There was one specific drive that I believe turned the tides in this game. Bears were up 14. Lions were driving down in a drive that eventually ended up scoring on. But flags were the bane of their existence on this drive. Lions got 4 first downs via penalty in this game. 4. And I think they may have all come in this one drive. Because it seemed like every time the Bears would make a stop, there was a flag on the field and the Lions were going close to the end zone. And one egregious call that killed this team's momentum was when Jack Sanborn picked off Jared Goff, which he had a great game, by the way. I'm not going to rat on Jack Sanborn. He did just fine. And he had an interception, and it was taken back for, I believe, illegal hands to the face. And you could say it was a questionable call, whatever you want to say, but man, that is just a brutal call, and you can't take it. They just have to be more disciplined, and they weren't. 31 points for the Lions. They scored 21 in the fourth quarter. And again, the defense could have held them. The Bears punting it. Trent Gill did a fantastic job at the end of the game, punting it away to Detroit. They were left inside their own 10. Great punt. They had to go 91 yards with about 5 minutes left, and they were in the end zone by the 2.5-minute mark. Couple massive plays, failing to get a third down stop. Biggest play of the drive, 3rd down and 8. Jalen Johnson covering to a receiver I had no idea existed. I believe his last name was Kennedy. Made a catch, went 45 yards, and they're inside the 20. Can't let that happen. Cannot let that happen. And the defense crumbled when they needed it most. Now, granted, one of the 3 touchdowns Detroit scored was a pick 6. So, nothing the defense, you can't blame the defense on that one because they weren't involved on that play. But Justin Fields immediately redeemed himself after that. Went and ran for a 67-yard touchdown to get the Bears to lead back. Santos misses the extra point, and it's the difference in the game. And you know what? I'm not going to sit here and blame Cairo Santos because he's been a fantastic kicker. It's the first kick all year he's really blown. He's been automatic all year. Yeah, he's now missed 3 extra points, but 2 of them were in a massive slogfest against San Francisco where it was just impossible to kick anything. So, frankly, this is the first awful kick he's had all season. And you know what would have helped for the team to win and not have to rely on an extra point being made? Well, you got to make them, but you know what would have helped? It's if the defense stopped them on that 91-yard touchdown drive. It's if the defense were taking penalties that gave Detroit 4 first downs. I don't know what else to say. Defense did not look good again. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't want to... It's not Justin Fields' fault. He has no support. They traded away the 2 best defensive players on the team, and the defense is now awful. And I don't know. I don't know. They got him Chase Claypool, who is now still trying to get into the offense. So that has still not really worked. What do the Bears do in the offense? In the offseason, excuse me. I know they have a ton of cap space. They're going to get a top draft pick because if they play like this, they're going to not win another game for the rest of the year. I don't know, man. I am just so fed up because the team is finally looking good offensively. The last 4 weeks, it's been a blessing to see the offense actually scoring points. They're actually scoring more than 20 points a game. It's a miracle. And the most frustrating part is that the defense, the part of the team that we can usually rely on, has looked horrendous in the last 3 weeks, and it's causing them to lose games. And, you can blame the defense all you want, but second straight week where the Bears have had the ball down, needing a field goal, and they can't convert. This time it was dead from the get-go. Last week you can say what you want about the pass interference on Chase Claypool, say what you want. This week was just on the Bears offense, just can't convert anything. And it's, I don't know. They got one call to go their way, but then not that ensuing series. Fields was sacked on 2nd down. It was 3rd and 15, a short pass to Montgomery that was able to get make it under 4th and 10. And then Justin Fields does some more massive acrobatics, and it just shows off his athletic ability, but can't get the ball away. And he's sacked, and the game's over. So it's like, I don't know what to say anymore. Because we know what the problems with this team are now, and it's not Fields. At least running the ball. He needs to be better throwing the ball, and the Bears need to be able to throw the ball. Which, this was I have no idea why they continued to just pass the ball when they needed to score. I understand that in those late game situations, you need to pass the ball and get out of bounds. They had all 3 timeouts. And the running game had been fantastic. Again. And they resort to the passing game, which had been decent, but definitely secondary to the running game all game long. Again. And so they rely on the passing game, and of course, it doesn't convert. Fields in this game, a 99.4 QBR. Not awful. Definitely not what we saw against Houston, where I think his pass rating was under 30. So he's at least looking solid. He threw 2 touchdowns. Again, threw that pick. Not good. 167 yards through the air. And I know it's a passing league. I know this league is becoming a passing league. But even if the Bears' passing game was maybe even 25th, maybe in the mid-20s, this team would have won this game. Because you have the best rushing offense. If you have even just a decent passing game, you're going to win games. Because they cannot pass in these scenarios. They cannot pass. And it's what happens when you have the worst passing offense in the league, because 1, you have no receivers outside of Darnell Mooney. 2, your quarterback's been struggling to throw the ball all season long. And while you have been playing to his strengths, you need to make sure that he's more effective reading defenses and throwing the ball. Knowing when to throw it away, knowing when to get rid of the ball, because it's been a rough game. It's been a rough season for Chicago. Again. And this is it's just terrible. The reason why I didn't react like this to the last 2 games was because we were favored to lose, and we were going to lose those games. I didn't even think they had a shot. So I was actually very pleased with their performance against Miami. But this is a game they should have won. And they should have won and put the game away and finished them off when they were up 14. I can't believe I let my own guard down when they were up 14 in the 4th quarter. I was like, it's Detroit. It's not going to be a big deal. They score early in the 2nd, and then Fields throws that pick 6. Tie game. So, I don't know what to say at this point that I've already said. So they have Atlanta next week, who haven't looked very good this season either. But if they lose this game to Detroit, what tells me that they can potentially even beat Atlanta? And I think that's the biggest problem I'm having now. It's like, if they ended up winning this game and they finished them off, held them off with that 14-point game, I would have been much more hopeful for next week. But they're on the road, and Atlanta's looked somewhat okay. They haven't looked that good in the past couple weeks, but Bears still can't pick up a win to save their lives despite scoring 30 points a game, because the defense can't stop anything. Can't get a big stop. But you know who has? Detroit. Detroit's defense has played very well and has gotten stops when they needed to the last 2 weeks against divisional opponents. Beat Green Bay last week. Huge defensive game for Detroit. This one, Chicago just couldn't finish, and Detroit comes up with another huge defensive effort. And it ends up helping them get a win. So yeah, I don't know. And I mean, if they lose this game to Atlanta, they may lose every single game for the rest of the year, because they'll have the Jets right after on the road, which they've looked pretty good. They just beat Buffalo last week. Then they have Green Bay, which I don't even know at this point. Like, Green Bay hasn't looked that great this year, but you know what? You know what team that they always find a way to beat, regardless of how good or bad they are? Chicago. So what tells me that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to get things together this week or until week 13 when they play Chicago? So I don't know. And then they have the bye, and their last 4 games, 3 of them which are at home: Philly, Buffalo, in Detroit, and then Minnesota. Arguably the top 3 teams in the league. Minnesota just beat Buffalo in an absolute thriller on the road, by the way. Probably the game of the year. So they're going to lose those 3 games, and if they lose to Detroit at home, what tells us that they're going to beat them on the road? Well, I mean, the fact that they've won the last, 5 years. But other than that, I mean, there's no way that this team can look like this and then lose to Detroit. Last week, I don't know. I am finished. I don't even know what to think because Justin Fields was given so much praise this week, and I'm so frustrated about that. You may be asking yourself, why are you upset that the media is giving so much, praise to Justin Fields? Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what you guys want? Yes, I do want that. But I want him to get the respect that he deserves when he's consistent. He had another great game, but it doesn't matter when you start losing games. And I know this year is not the priority. I know this year winning games is not the priority. But it has to come to a point where you have to finish opponents off and finish games. Because Justin Fields looked great on the ground again, but outside of the ground game, the team can't play. And so, you have the best rushing offense in the league, worst pass defense, or worst passing offense in the league. And in the past 3 weeks, you probably got the worst defense in the league in terms of points allowed. You can't win many games with just running the football. Running the football is the Bears' identity, and it has been for a while. And I love that they're really good at running the ball. They're averaging they have 225 yards in 5 straight games. Doesn't matter if you can't pass. Doesn't matter if your defense can't stop anything. That's it. That's it right there. Get it together, or else next year is going to look exactly like this year if they can't get anything going. And that's the most frustrating thing. We've been seeing the development from Fields, yet it still is nothing. It's still nothing to me because they can't finish because he has no support. And, I'm looking forward to see what happens when Fields gets receivers that more than one receiver. But right now, Fields' development's nice and all, but I'm starting to get sick of losing. And I just want to see that win counter go up at least once or twice more this season because it is just absolutely horrendous what I'm seeing on the field. You can't lose at home to Detroit. This is supposed to be the game of every year that you look on the schedule like, oh, there's a win. There's a win that they can actually get. And Detroit, first win on the road in 2 years, which, by the way, was to Chicago in similar fashion. With the same broadcast team on the call, by the way. Seriously, this game was so similar to what we had last year. Only difference was that both teams had different quarterbacks. But the Bears still had a lead, and they choked. And it's so infuriating. It's Dan Campbell's first road win as a head coach. Good for Dan Campbell. I have nothing against him. I have nothing against Dan Campbell. But it's just so frustrating that this type of stuff always happens against us. First road win in 2 years. Some massive streak of games that the Lions have had that they are now going to break against Chicago. That 14-point comeback in the fourth stat for 30 years. Always against Chicago. I'd say I'm desensitized to the losing at this point, but I think the biggest problem for me in this game, and this is my own fault, is that I actually had expectations for this game, and I actually got my hopes up. Which is the darndest thing. It really is. Even when you're even when they're terrible, I look at a game like the home game against Detroit and I'm like, that's a game they can win. Every year. But now I don't know if I can anymore with the way they've collapsed in 2 of the last 3 games at home against Detroit. It's just absolutely brutal. And I don't know what to say else. So this one, a bit different than the reaction from the home game against Detroit 2 years ago, which was very short and frankly a warranted video for Chicago. This one is just deflating because it's just deflating. I got nothing else. If you liked it, please hit the like button. And if you really like this one, hit that subscribe button. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.